Welcome back to another MOTOBOB video where today we're going to be looking at more bikes from Yamaha, and this one is super exciting. It's the Yamaha Tenere Raid prototype. So it's a more extreme off-road focused version of the Tenere 700, and it's got all sorts of interesting mods to increase its abilities on that sort of terrain. So in this video we'll go through all of the details and I'll tell you 13 things, yes 13, that you need to know about it. But before we get started, a massive thanks to Pando Moto for sponsoring the channel. They supply all of my riding gear and I absolutely love the way it looks, the way it fits, and also the quality of the material and production. If you watch my reviews, you'll see me wearing their Husky court jacket, their Onyx gloves, and their Robby Arm jeans. So if you're interested in any of those products, check out the links in the description. Now first, a bit of context. This Raid prototype is almost certainly inspired by the trials and extreme enduro rider Paul Tarres. If you subscribe to his YouTube channel, and you really should if you don't already, then you might have seen his two incredible films that feature his Tenere 700. The first one is called The Seeker, and then the second is surprisingly called The Seeker 2, and I think it's inspired a lot of people to see what this bike can do in more challenging circumstances. Obviously his abilities are far beyond pretty much anybody, but it just goes to show what it can do in the right hands. On top of that, he's also raced it at the 2021 edition of the Red Bull Romaniacs race. This event has a reputation for being super difficult, with the stages spanning 5 days and covering around 600 kilometers in distance. And look, he finished 18th in the bronze class, which is a way off the podium, but he was the only rider on an adventure bike as opposed to a dedicated enduro bike. To even have completed it is quite an achievement, so all super impressive stuff, and you can see that some of the mods on his bike are similar to what you find on this Raid prototype. Now Yamaha split the modifications to this bike into 3 main areas, so the engine, the suspension, and the brakes. There's no word on any increase in peak performance figures, with the standard bike making 72 horsepower at 9,000 RPM and 68 Nm of peak torque at 6,500. But all the same, they've made quite a few tweaks. So there's a GYTR ECU, which is their racing division, and you also get the full titanium Akropovich race exhaust and a high performance airbox and filter, so let's assume there's at least a slight bump in peak output. Either way, it'll certainly feel a little more snappy with a 48 tooth rear sprocket as opposed to the 46 on the regular Tenere 700. Now if you're seriously going to rally this bike, then better cooling would of course be an advantage, so they've fitted a larger radiator as well as 2 cooling fans. There's also a new water pump cover, and they've fitted a new improved oil cooler, so that's a pretty substantial overhaul to the entire cooling system. The clutch also gets a bunch of upgrades with a new heavy duty recluse clutch, a 2-piece clutch cover, and also a new clutch lever. Now suspension is massively upgraded with a chunky 48mm KYB fork held by some custom CNC triple clamps. Travel is up substantially with 270mm on the fork here as opposed to 210 on the standard Tenere 700 and the Rally edition. It's the same story with the shock, again with a KYB upgrade that brings 260mm of travel as opposed to 200 on the standard bike. The braking setup has also seen a big change, moving away from the twin disc setup for a single front disc on the Raid prototype. It's on a 300mm wavy rotor, so slightly up on the regular 282mm discs, and you still get the Brembo caliper but with some racing brake pads. There's also an upgraded front brake master cylinder, and it gets a slightly fancier lever to match the clutch. At the rear, the disc increases from 245mm to 267, and there's also a new caliper mounting bracket as well as steel braided hoses both front and rear for that extra crisp feel at the lever. There's some stuff they didn't list in the press release though, but it's clearly visible from the imagery they've released. So you get a 16-litre fuel tank as standard on the Tenere, which isn't bad at all, especially considering that it's relatively fuel efficient. You should be able to get a couple of 100 miles out of it if you're riding carefully, but still that's probably not enough to get across a desert. As such, you can see there are 2 fillers on the tank, so obviously there's an increase in capacity there, but also there are now tanks on either side of the subframe which will really give things a boost. The details are fairly vague, so there's no specifics, but it's not unusual for rally bikes to have over 30 litres, so effectively double the standard bike. The standard LCD dash has made way for a proper rally setup, complete with a roebuck mount, and there's new switchgear to match. Wheels have also been upgraded, and you can see some bling looking blue anodized hubs. They're shod with some proper knobbly and hard-wearing Michelin Desert Race tyres. You can also see a big carbon bash guard under the front of the engine there, so offering plenty of protection from rocks and whatnot, whilst also being fairly lightweight. There's a rally seat as well, which should offer a little more space for the rider to maneuver themselves on the bike, and also you get a Scott steering damper for a little extra stability on uneven terrain. The Raid prototype also gets its own paint scheme with a grey and black camo across the bodywork. There are a few pops of blue and the GYTR logo across the side, and I think it looks pretty sweet. Not the only bike to get a colour update for 2022 though, with both the standard Tenere and the Rally Edition getting some revised paint schemes. The base model now comes in Icon Blue with blue rims, or Midnight Black for a more stealthy look. The Rally Edition, on the other hand, is available in Heritage White with red speed block graphics and gold anodized rims. That means that the previous year model's blue and yellow is no longer available, which is a bit of a shame, but you can understand them wanting to freshen it up for the next season. Those colour updates will be in dealers from December apparently, but as for the Rally prototype, well, in their own words, it'll soon be racing for the next horizon and write a new story that's sure to reinforce the Tenere legend in the eyes of a new generation of adventure riders. So clearly the focus is racing rather than production, and you might be thinking of Dakar, but unfortunately it's limited to 450cc and this is a 689, but presumably we'll see it at plenty of other rally events in the near future. As always, I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments below, and if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll see you next time.